how Pixel Gun 3D lost 98% of its players. Let's go.
Over the last 10 years, Pixel Gun 3D went from a beloved childhood game to one of the most hated games of all time, dropping from an impressive 500,000 daily player count to sometimes not even being able to reach 1,000 players recently. So where did it all go wrong? Well, to understand that, we need
Microtransactions. That's where it all went wrong.
to go back to 2013. At the time, games like Counter-Strike and the shooter genre in general was starting to blow up. But the thing was, it was only accessible on PC and had an older audience. Now with that, Alex
And there was a campaign. My favorite thing about Pixel Gun 3D, if y'all ever played it, there was an amazing campaign.
Krasnov saw an opportunity. He saw that the whole concept was working on PC and there were no other games like that on mobile, meaning there was a clear market gap. What other games were blowing up at that time? That's right, Minecraft. So high on some shrooms, probably. He thought, let's just combine the two. So combining Minecraft, CSGO, some random shit and adding a storyline to
Dude, the storyline was so good, bro. The lore, the zombies, the boss at the end. When I was a little kid, I was so scared to fight the Slender Man boss, I remember. It was pretty hard, but it wasn't too hard also.
the whole thing. We got Pixel Gun 3D. In theory, the perfect game. Yeah, it completely flopped. Not even reaching 1,000 players his first month. The game was repetitive and had no replay value. But here is where things started to take a turn. You see, over the next couple of months, the game would see very little growth. The game was clearly missing something, and Alex needed to come up with something fast. Over the next coming updates, he added new guns, items, and other shiny objects. But one update stood out from the rest. Update 1.2. Apart from featuring more unnecessary junk, it had a single feature that would change the game forever. Multiplayer. With this update, you were
Wow, multiplayer. So originally this was just a campaign game.
now able to play with other people, including your friends in the FFA game mode. The point of the mode was simple. You were thrown into a free-for-all arena with about 10 other players, and the person who got the most amount of kills won the game. Nothing too crazy, right?
Y'all gotta understand the time of this though. Like, this is back when there was barely any mobile games that even had multiplayer. No, the great thing about mobile games is everybody has a phone. So everybody can play it together. Because I think the only other really big game that had multiplayer was Minecraft. And even Minecraft was really a big struggle to play multiplayer with, I remember.
Right? But this is exactly what the game was missing. It introduced a competitive aspect, meaning you now had an actual reason to grind the game, also promoting the growth of communities. Keep this in mind for later. The game immediately skyrocketed.
Oh, I remember these maps, dude. Lord have mercy. These maps were such a classic. The maps were so good. The weapons were really awesome. The whole entire art of the game was really interesting too.
In popularity, going from a couple of hundred players per day to over 10,000.
Wow.
This is probably around the time you were introduced to the game, where maps like Heavenly Garden and Pool Party were
I remember playing these as a kid. I think this map itself was on the campaign also.
first added. Over the next coming months, the game would continue growing exponentially, and with that, the developers added more updates to support the
I remember being a kid and there was like a pack you can get for like $5.99 and you get like the minigun. I wanted it so bad and I begged and begged my dad and he said yes. I think this is the first ever video game that I bought something with. Or like I bought a microtransaction with.
updates to support the exponentially growing player base. Update 0.89, introducing the new Capture the Flag game mode. Two teams competing against each other, with each team assigned their own side with a flag. And point of the game was to bring the enemy's team flag onto your own territory. Update 0.92, adding the Hunger Games game mode, which is already a popular thing back then. 10 players thrown onto a map with loot chests all scattered around, and the last man standing won. And these are all things that became iconic staples of
So he really made Call of Duty in mobile, if you think about it. He made a whole entire Call of Duty game in an iPhone.
the game.
For children also.
The updates had actual meaning and purpose, making the game genuinely better and fixing real problems. But behind the scenes, things were starting to bubble. With the new active player base, Alex saw an opportunity to make money. You see, previously, similar to other games, you were only able to buy cosmetic items for real money, which didn't affect the gameplay. But with this update, he added the option to purchase coins.
Yep. I remember buying these also. This is what made his game absolutely flop. because everybody's grinding for these weapons, right? And now you can just buy it for $100. You know, you can just buy the best weapon in the game and you can just destroy everybody. I think this is the downfall. It was so fun grinding for the weapons, getting that weapon and beating everybody, right? But now little Timmy can just buy a $100 pack and literally just get, you know, the best weapon in the game and destroy everybody.
For which you could purchase in-game items. Going from the...
Yeah, and these in-game items, I remember, were so overpowered. It ruined the game for everybody else.
Everyone had an equal chance of victory, to now adding the possibility to buy yourself to the top without any more skill. But this was only a slight annoyance to the player base, since the items you could purchase weren't even that hard to get without paying. So the game continued to grow, and now content creators started to pick it up as well. The game was fun, replayable.
I remember this. I was so horrified to play this as a kid.
It was popular, making it literally perfect to make videos on. Creators like Exotic Gaming and Esoteric Inc. were the first to pick up on this. And now, with videos being made about Pixel Gun, it took the game to a whole nother level. At that time as well, Update 6.0 was released. The community aspect of Pixel Gun was one of the biggest reasons for the game's success. So they added clans, which was very well received, and new clans quickly started forming, further amplifying the competitive aspect of Pixel Gun, making the community even more dedicated.
Yeah, and the whole entire art, I said that already, Chad, but the whole entire art style is just so well done.
The game had now surpassed its newcomers.
Like, all these weapons you see have a different type of ability or a different type of, just, you know, different type of effect. Like, this one's a fart gun, I remember. This one's a bubble gun. This one I think you can fly with. Like, every single gun has such a different ability, and it was so awesome.
Status, having over 50 million players and being a titan in mobile gaming. The game had a core player base, community and dedicated fans, large content creators making
Wow, 1.7 million views.
videos about the game, and an established developer team. The game was on top of the world. It showed no signs of slowing down. But from this point on, things would start to take a weird turn. A couple of months go by and the game is still rapidly growing. And you would think the game's features would do the same, but there were barely any significant updates made, except the addition of more OP weapons.
Yep, and these weapons, I know for a fact, were very hard to get, and you could pay a very, very, very cheap amount of money and unlock it.
Which we'll get into in a bit. The game got stagnant. Meanwhile, the player base was still growing, and understandably so, the more experienced players were starting to get bored. But forget the players, there was a way bigger issue at stake. Pixel Gun content creators were relying on the constant supply of new content in the game and things to make videos about. But without that, there were a lot less videos being made about the game, so the developers had to come up with something quick to freshen up the game and keep the players engaged. So they decided to follow in their old footsteps. Update 11.0. Now this update added duels.
In my opinion, if they wanted more content, they should have made a new campaign, because the campaign was very well done.
A new game mode. They learned from the mistakes and finally added a new core feature to the game. Good, right? But they didn't account for one thing. You see, in the duels mode, you're placed in a map with one other person, and the point of the game is to kill your opponent. You know the deal. Compared
So 1v1.
to the similar FFA mode, you're with 10 other players. One person may snipe you from the back, one may have a higher position than you, giving them the upper hand. Point is, there were so many factors determining who won, making players less focused on skill and more so on the gameplay and just having fun. Duels Arena on the other hand, you're placed with one other person. The map is completely the same for both players on each side. The mode has a skill matching system, and your focus is 100% on your opponent, a complete 50-50 for both players, making the match completely skill reliant. There was no luck involved, it was purely skill based.
And that's absolutely awesome. I don't understand how this is bad for the game.
This mode introduced a completely new realm to the game. Players all of a sudden became a lot better, and I mean way better. Now the players who weren't willing to grind the game couldn't keep up with the pro players. The skill gap between new players was growing by the day, and that understandably raised the entry level. The developers noticed this as well, and they did something about it, but not in the way you would expect. Remember how I told you earlier that Pixel Gun was notorious for adding new weapons to the game?
No, like, in my opinion, like if there's a lot of sweats, then just add a competitive system. Like, Fortnite has a really big sweat problem. If you add a rank system, that's going to take all the really try-hards and sweaty players into one place, and all the kind of fun, kind of like, oh, I'll play this game once every month, players, they'll be in another area. So it separates them from, fighting each other.
Well, that's exactly what
Casual players, yeah, exactly. Just separate the casual players in the tryhards.
Remember how I told you earlier that Pixel Gun was notorious for adding new weapons to the game? Well, that's exactly what they did now. In Pixel Gun, you start with a certain amount of coins, which you can buy weapons for. So they thought, alright, why not just introduce better weapons so new players can buy them and have a chance against pros? And that's what they did. They started to add weapons literally at one point every week. This resulted in them earning more money than ever. But it did one thing that would completely destroy the game.
It made it so everybody has an overpowered weapon, and it sucks the joy out of it.
First, it did the opposite of what they were intending. Pro players were now buying up these weapons, making them even more OP. And second of all, the weapons that old players had grinded for in previous seasons now became completely useless against the new OP weapons. But why would they care? They were now making more money than ever. And why even waste money developing intuitive updates, genuinely making the game better and more fun, when you can just add more guns and make 10 times more money than an actual update ever?
In my opinion with this is you should do both. You should make money, of course, right? But you have to remove other weapons. Way too many weapons, way too many different type of styles of gameplay. In my opinion, they should have got, rid of some weapons. Like, maybe for October, they have a gun that shoots, candy corn, right? And then after Halloween ends, everybody gets rid of it. If you want to, enjoy the new weapon and play it and have fun with it, you can. And then a month later, you get rid of it.
Would. So that's what they did. More guns, more items, pets, whatever the fuck this is. More and more things you can spend money on. And so on and so on. And guns that were previously easy to get now took days of grinding, further incentivizing the players to spend money.
That's the worst thing, when game companies make it very hard to grind for something and very, 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 very easy to just spend $5 and unlock it. I played Clash Royale for a long time, and to get this exotic item, it takes months of grinding, and you can pay $5 and unlock it. It's so unfair.
Is where everything started going downhill. Players started leaving by the second. Even recently joined players were now leaving after realizing how pay to win the game is. The developers made some attempts at saving the game, like adding skill matching and changing the clan system, and at some point even removing the duelist mode altogether, but the damage was already done. And ironically, the changes they made ended up upsetting the player base even more. But after that, nothing more happened. They also tried hopping on some trends like Squid Game and the Battle Royale mode to make a quick buck, further showcasing their greed and lack of care for the community. One more thing to mention as well is that they removed 70% of the OG maps and items from the game for some reason, and at that point the game was truly unsavable. Skip to present day and the game is left with about only a couple of thousand players per day, consisting of tryhards that grind the game 10 hours a day and spend thousands on it, and 7-year-olds that have way too much time on their hand. The game is hacker infested and it's just generally a mess. When you open up the game, you get bombarded with about 30 different pop-ups begging you to spend your parents' retirement fund on some fucking dragon pet. And apart from the developers' greed, I think there was one more thing as well, which made the game completely fall off. The game did not innovate. They tried clinging onto the features that made it successful in the first place, but they didn't realize that innovation is truly why Pixel Gun blew up. It's because Alex dared to take that risk of adding multiplayer, not knowing if it will work or not.
He got too comfortable, and he probably was like, I'm gonna keep making money, and then he kind of forgot he's running a video game. He's not running, a business. He has to, make people happy.
So yeah, that's it. Please sub, bye.
Great outro, man. A lot of, mobile games just absolutely tanked in value. It's pretty sad, man.